Today we are joined with Billy Dennehy. Billy, how are you?
Good, not too bad, Pat. How are you?
Not too bad. Tipping away. Quarantine. You know yourself now, not much to do.
I know, man. It's a different, it's a different life now with no sport or nothing on. It's kind of tough not having anything on the telly to watch. But hopefully we'll be back soon.
Yeah, hopefully. So I suppose we'll go straight into it. For those that may not know who you are, do you want to give us a little brief timeline of your career from when you started playing football to when you finished playing? The clubs you were at and the timeline of that.
Jeez, how long have you got? I suppose like every other lad, started off playing sports locally with my local teams, mostly on the street with my brother and my friends. Not really thinking too much of where it would go. Obviously, as I got a little bit older, maybe a teenager, I think again, like most lads, the sound of being a professional footballer doesn't sound so bad. But again, it's probably something that's very unrealistic in the bigger picture of things. But look, I was very fortunate enough to, I suppose, go on and play for many years. And my brother did also, which I suppose is unusual for two brothers to come from a small estate in Kerry to go over to England. But no, it was very, very enjoyable. I only retired recently, but playing is definitely something that I'll always remember fondly because it was a great experience for the few years I was doing it.
Yeah. So the clubs you've been at, correct me if I am wrong.
I'll be very impressed if you get all these right, Pat. I'll tell you that.
You were with, okay. All right, that's a challenge. So you were with Dynamos anyway, when you were underage in Tralee. You were Kingdom Boys underage?
That's right, yeah.
Shelburne?
Yes.
Sunderland?
That's correct.
Accrington Stanley, am I right?
Yes, and one Sloan.
That was a loan move.
Yeah.
Right. You went Cork, Rovers, Cork, Pats, Limerick.
Yeah, you left out one, but it was a short spell, so I won't be too harsh on you. I went to Derry when I first came back from England.
Oh, Derry, that's it, yeah.
Yeah,
did my
so I was on.
research.
You did, Pa. Fair play to you, man. I can barely remember them all myself some days, to be honest.
But out of all the clubs you've played with, so you've obviously played, you were over in England, which was, I'm assuming it was a very young age, and you came back to play in the Airtricity League. Out of the teams you played with, who's the standout player that you've played with? Who's the best player you've played with? It doesn't matter if you don't have to look at it from a point of view of who's the most skillful, who's the best leader, just overall, the first person that comes to mind when you say who's the best player you've played with.
So many for many different reasons. It's always hard to just pinpoint one as if, he's unbelievable, because when you play in so many different teams and at that level, you're not just playing with 11 lads, say 10 other players on the pitch. You have maybe another 20 lads who you're training with every day. More probably 30 lads. So there's so many players like over the years I've come across. But off the top of my head, I mean, over in England at the time, you had the Sunderland team was littered with internationals. Like, obviously, Liam Miller, you had, Colin Healy, you had Darren Murphy, you had Stephen Elliott at the time, you had, many Irish internationals in back home as well. But I think if I just had that top of my head, a name that always springs to mind is Gary Twigg at Shamrock Rovers. He was a teammate who was an absolute goal machine. To this day, I haven't seen a player who could score goals like him, any kind of goals. You would be on the pitch and you'd be looking at him thinking he's not doing much here because he's not tracking defenders down or he's not chasing the ball. But when you needed a goal, he'd get you a goal, like any kind of a goal. And yourself or any lads, when you're playing and you're in a team and you have a player like that, they're worth their weight in gold. Like, so I think I can attribute a lot of the trophies I have down to him. So I'd say Twiggy's up there.
And I suppose then with Pat kind of saying who's the best player you've played with, who'd be the best player you've played against, then would be the next question, I suppose, like looking at, I suppose once again you've played against so many players, but like I suppose who stands out to mind when you think about that, who would be your go-to? He was very bollocks now to play against, like.
I think the biggest kind of jump up in players that I felt was tough was when with Shamrock Rovers we qualified for the group stage of the Europa League.
Yeah.
And we'd come from playing in qualifiers. I played in qualifiers for a few years before that, so we played different teams around Europe. But once we got into the group stage, Europa League, those games, you could tell straight away they were another level.
Mhm.
Every single player on the pitch is another level, you know. And I can remember even we played Tottenham, and Andros Townsend was just young at Tottenham at the time, only kind of breaking onto the scene, and that lad was a machine, you know. And he wasn't international at that time. He was obviously on the way to that. But so many other players, you know, in the Tottenham team, even teams like, you know, Pauk in Greece and Ruben Kazan, Russia, you know, these lads are technically unbelievable players. So, you know, in sport and in soccer, you definitely see the levels you go up, the gaps are big, you know. But I think probably personally for a one-on-one position, say me playing on the left as a right back, I'd say it probably would have been Kyle Walker when we played against Tottenham. You know, a few months later, he went to Man City for about 50 million. So I wasn't too hard on myself after that one. So I already went to Man City. I said, well, fair enough to him. So probably.
And were you on? I could be wrong here. When Madrid came over to Ireland, they played Rovers, didn't they? Were you on that squad?
Yeah. No, I wasn't. That was the pre-season before I'd signed. So I think that was the first year Rovers were in Tallaght. They went to Real Madrid, played them in the friendly. But a lot of the boys who were actually there at that time, we played Juventus in a European qualifier a couple of years later after that Real Madrid game. But the boys were even saying that it's totally different than having a friendly and a competitive game. You know, obviously Real Madrid came over to play a friendly, but when Juventus came over, they were playing a competitive game. So there was a totally different feel to the game and the surroundings of the game, you know. So it would have been great to play against Real Madrid. Obviously, it was one of Ronaldo's first games in the friendly.
It was his first game for Madrid, I remember it watching the TV.
Yeah,
it was very young.
So a good experience for all the boys to play in that as well. Like, you know, it would have been there would have been a lot of lads queuing up for his jersey after the game anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah. Hurleys and helmets signed and Gaelic football signed. I'd say anything you had near you.
Absolutely, man, absolutely.
But I suppose so the next question I have for you know is, has there ever been a team you've played against and you've just completely been overwhelmed with their performance? So we've all lost games where we've gotten hammered 4 or 5-0, but I know I've lost a game to a team 4 or 5-0, but they just wanted it more. You know, it wasn't pretty football.
Yeah.
They went out there and they beat you, and they beat you well. But I noticed again as well, every time we play Killarney Celtic, it's just you get hammered, but it's just a different. You're standing there also at the same time thinking, how the fuck is he doing? You know, and you just can't get over how well they move the ball, how quick they are, how just cute they are. Has there ever been a team, even outside of Ireland, that you've just kind of admitted defeat almost on the field and you've kind of looked thinking, Jesus Christ, it was almost like you couldn't reach that level or match them?
Yeah, I don't think you ever get to the stage on the pitch where you feel like, you know, you give up and you think they're too good. You know, you always keep going no matter what the score is. I mean, that's the way I'd kind of be anyway. No matter what the score is, you're fighting till the end. But definitely a few days after the game, you might start thinking like that, you know, that Jesus, they were a good bit ahead, and why is that? But the only time I ever felt it was, I suppose, and not so much as an individual skill from the players, but more as a collective, as a team. We played Copenhagen away in a qualifier. I can't remember what year it was now. But before, in the lead up to that game, the manager, Michael O'Neill, who's the Stoke manager now, he was drilling us on the shape and the tactical way that they played. So the system that they played, the formation. And I'd never seen it before. I'd never come across it. So when we were working on it, I was half thinking to myself, I don't think they're going to be playing like this, because I've never seen this before. But then when you go onto the pitch, the system that they played and the way they set up, it was unbelievable. But to be fair to our manager at the time, he had us so well drilled on it and he had us so well clued into it. We were prepared. But if we hadn't been prepared, you know, it would have been very, very, very difficult. So probably Copenhagen away was a learning curve for me. Now coaching, that was a good learning curve for me to see the different formations and the way things can work.
Yeah. Have you any question, Chris?
I suppose so. I just want to. I'm more like the atmosphere. I know this might be kind of a very childish question. I mean, but how do you feel the atmosphere in Europe? Would you say? I suppose they're much bigger stadiums, and I suppose the hype and I suppose that's in Europe too, so the pressure would be a lot higher. Do you think the atmosphere there was something surreal altogether in comparison to the Airtricity League, or do you think, you know, when you're at home with the home fans and everyone's raring to go? Like, do you think? I suppose so. What would you say, atmosphere-wise? What? I'm kind of losing on myself now.
No, yeah, I know what you mean, but and you know what? It's a lot of people would ask me that from time to time. But you know, when you're in something, you're just going from the next that you don't even think about it. You know, I can remember one time we were playing Tottenham away, and in Europe you played on a Thursday, so then we'd be back playing League of Ireland on a Sunday. So like for months we were literally going Sunday, Thursday. So you were traveling, you were back, you were playing. So you didn't have time to really stop and think, oh Jesus, we're playing this team today. Or, you know, you'd see the names in the team meeting, the manager would be going through the team meeting and he'd be saying, oh, this player's going to be, you know, in that position, whatever. And you're seeing the names on the screen and you're going, Jesus. But then when you actually see them and you're there, you kind of forget a little bit. You know, I can remember being in the dressing room in Tottenham and the dressing room door was kind of open before we went out for the warm-up. We were just getting ready to go for the warm-up and there was a lad like throwing the ball against the door. He was huge. I said, geez, that must be one of the goalkeepers. And it was Gareth Bale. He was huge. You know, and like you're thinking for a second, Jesus, you know, but then when you get into it and you're out there on the pitch, as soon as the whistle kind of goes, you do forget where you are kind of. You know, if there's a break in the play, like a free kick or a corner, if you're going to take a corner, you might look up and think, Jesus, this is mad, this place, you know, but you kind of forget it and you kind of just get on with it, you know, when you're in the middle of the battle. But there has been a few times, all right, where it might get a bit loud in the big stadiums. You're thinking, this is great. Like, that's what real professional football is, being in that surroundings. Like, you know, it's good.
Yeah. And do you think, so I suppose this is kind of from my own observation, kind of hearing other people as well, it's no kind of surprise me saying that the Airtricity League isn't necessarily the best standard of football in Europe, or close to it, to be honest. But do you think there is how much of a gap do you think there is between the top team of the Airtricity League and do you think there's a bigger gap between the Airtricity League as a whole and the Championship than the top team in the Airtricity League and the bottom team in the Premier League, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, definitely wouldn't be Premier League, nowhere near Premier League, I'd imagine. But if you actually look at the Airtricity League, if you actually went through the players who have come from the Airtricity League and went on to become full internationals in a short space of time, you know, for some reason, there is a stigma of the Airtricity League. I think it's more to do with off the pitch than on the pitch. If you had, again, if you had, look at the Premier League, for example, or the Bundesliga. At the minute, you're watching Bundesliga games and they don't feel the same. You know, I was watching Dortmund there the other night and you're looking at it and it feels like a pre-season friendly when you're watching it. You know, you're half watching it and you're losing interest in the game. And when the Premiership comes in, I have a feeling it'll be the same. But it's marketed so well that you're not just watching the game, you're watching the whole experience. So you're watching the stadium, you're watching the supporters, you're watching the commentary, you're listening to different things. So it's the whole experience to me that markets the brand of football. And that's what the Airtricity League is missing, in my opinion. You know, they're missing a proper marketing tool and a branding that, you know, people aren't just going and dissecting every little part of the game, but they're enjoying the atmosphere of it all more. So I think if the Airtricity League had that, I think the league would be a lot more credible. Because if you look at, say, Sean Maguire, just for an example, because he's the latest one, he was playing for Cork City, signed for Preston, and within 6 months he was in the Irish squad or so, you know. So, like, you can't say a player is going improving massively over a short spell in England. Do you know what I mean? So I think for the Airtricity League, I think it's a fantastic platform for young players. I think young players can go on and do really well. Even in the Stevens, I was a Shamrock Rovers within that. He was a young lad. Well, not that young. He was probably a bit younger than me, but you know, he went off to England a bit later, and now he's playing the Premier League every week for Sheffield United. Yeah. You know, so he had that grounding from the Airtricity League. So it's a massive platform, and you know, it's a massive opportunity for young players to kind of put themselves on the shop window. But I think overall, I understand what you're saying about the Airtricity League not being seen as that high standard, because it isn't within the bigger levels of Europe, but it's definitely probably a lot more of a higher level than people realise.
Yeah. Do you think it'll always be a stepping stone league as such to bigger things in the like a Premier League or a top Championship League team? Or do you think it is possible if, let's just say, they brand it a lot more and they bring in, if they just expanded on each club and made it kind of more like a more feel-good club instead of, you know, like I noticed there's some clubs up the country and stuff. Like my girlfriend's from just by Sligo, and she says like Sligo they love football, or they love soccer. They love Sligo Rovers because that is kind of their first sport up there. It's not necessarily football or hurling. Do you think that's what impacts other clubs in around the countries, because they already have their number 1 and 2 sport? So it's kind of almost a half-arsed. I wouldn't say half-arsed. That's kind of been it's kind of been horrible as well. But do you get me? There isn't as much passion in soccer as there is for the other sports. Do you think they kind of have to go all in and try and get everyone in on each club? And once that expands in, it won't necessarily be a stepping stone league anymore. They might actually build it up to the heights of like the Scottish League with Celtic and Rangers. There's 3 or 4 teams that actually go for Europe, and no, it's not a full league of quality teams, but at least there's 3 or 4 standout teams that are always there and thereabouts.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and you see, as a stepping stone thing, see, when you get into that level of football, professional football, it becomes a business then.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, what could happen is, why would you play for one team for £1 and maybe get paid £10 off somebody else? You know what I'm saying? So it becomes that a lot of that element comes into, in terms of being the stepping stone, that like if you are in Ireland, if a club in England or elsewhere, the Irish clubs wouldn't be able to match the contracts, and then it becomes down to the player. What do they want to do? Obviously when I was a young player, I went over and enjoyed the experience of it all, and really enjoyed it. But once I came back to Ireland, I had that experience. I didn't want to go back again, and I had a few options to go back at different times, but I was happy with Ireland and the clubs I was at the time, that they were, was able to make a good living and all that. So I was happy, but other lads, when they are young especially, I can understand totally that, the lower is England, because ultimately the contracts are bigger, but in terms of what you're saying about how do you build that up, say in Kerry, for example, I think it's a very close mentality from anybody to say, oh, we're competing with this team or we're competing with that. Or to me, you should be open to every sport. Like every sport should be supporting each other. I'd be definitely watching Gaelic football and hurling as much as I do soccer. I'd watch anybody who's wearing a Kerry jersey. And I think if everyone has that attitude, then everyone can support each other. You can go and watch a Gaelic game on a Saturday, you can go and watch whatever, you can go and watch different things and support everyone. But, for Kerry, for example, I can send it to the 17s this year, there's no blueprint to follow. I mean, if you're playing, say, Gaelic football, for example, you can look back at the olden days and you can show them a culture and a history and a tradition that's been there for long before all of us.
Yeah.
But, in soccer, in this area, there is no history, there is no culture. There's the local thing, but there's not real, League of Ireland level of, these players that's what you can aspire to. So that's what I'm kind of trying to build down here at the minute, is that them opportunities are there for players in Kerry, because the players are good enough, 100% are good enough, but they just have to know the right steps to take and have the belief in themselves to be able to go and do it.
Yeah. No, go on, Chris. Yeah.
I think like a lot of them players then, like let's say the up and coming, I don't know if you experienced it, like GA would be a massive kind of like, I suppose, pressure, like with football, as in with the football, would they kind of be like, okay, we'll get you on the Kerry panel now and you can go away from the soccer side? Do you think that pressure is there with that kind of age group? It's like, will I pick GA or will I pick soccer? Like that kind of mentality, like, if you get me.
Yeah, I think it is there. Probably it is there. Now, I don't think, to me anyway, and I've said it from the start, once I got involved in the coach side of things, I don't think you can ever influence a player to make a decision. I think that has to be an individual choice, because ultimately the player will make that choice down the road anyway. So say if you're trying to influence a player at a young age, 13 or 14, oh look, I think you should be playing this sport, then if their heart isn't fully in it, then they're going to kind of decide something else down the road. So I feel you should let everybody make up their own mind and have their own decisions on what they want to play. Even for myself in 2005, I was on the Kerry Minors and I was going to trials in England in between. I was over and back, and they weren't happy about it, and you're trying to juggle everything. So it is difficult. I fully understand it's very, very difficult for young players nowadays, because you have school teams, you have maybe hurling, you have football, you have basketball, you have soccer. There's so much going on. But ultimately, as the time goes by, players will make up, and people, boys and girls, they'll kind of go with what they love the most. And that's the good thing about it, is people should be able to make up their own minds and play whatever sport that they enjoy the most.
No, I agree with you, Joel. I think it's vital that, especially, I think it has kind of lightened a small bit. I know To be honest with you, even when I was kind of playing at that kind of under 17 level, I was playing hurling and football for Ardfort, but because they didn't have an underage soccer team, I was playing soccer for Ballyhigh. And there was never any give out about, if I said I had a game Saturday with Ballyhigh soccer instead of football or hurling training, they wouldn't mind because, it's a game, whatever, unless there was a county final the next day or something, obviously there would be. So I was kind of grateful, but I have seen and I have heard about that pressure, and I think it has eased off a small bit recently because a lot more people, even like yourself, are coming out saying, look, let them decide themselves. I think it has to be 100%. Drilled into coaches and management's heads that, look, if they do decide to go off and play rugby or basketball instead of football, even though you think that they can be the next big thing in football, if they don't feel like they want to do that and they want to go do something else, I think every coach kind of has to have that open mindset.
100%, because you're doing the player an injustice of whatever sport they feel, because just because a coach might feel that they could be the next whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they want to do. So you have to my mind, and I suppose I'm fortunate in the fact that I have had the career in being in this situation and the experiences of living away and moving away from home at 17 and doing all that sort of stuff, that maybe I'm a bit more relevant to it all, and the decision making that kind of affects the player, because I had to do it myself. So I'd be definitely conscious of that, is that, look, whatever it is, whatever sport kids are playing nowadays, let them play and let them enjoy it, because there's other things that they could be doing that'd be a lot worse. There's so much screens around the place nowadays. You barely see kids out in the street playing anymore. So if a kid is wanting to go to train and whatever it is, if they want to go out and meet people and exercise in whatever sport it is, then encourage it and let them find their own way, because ultimately they'll go back to whatever they enjoy the most.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you said there you're gone into coaching now since you've stepped away from playing. So what made you become a coach?
I think it was that one session I had with Ballyhigh back in the day.
We had a few sessions, to be fair.
We had a few sessions. And again, because like that, and I tell you, it's kind of where it started, because I was still playing at the time, and I wasn't really thinking of coaching or starting playing or anything like that. But then when I was on my off season, people would ask me, will you come and do a session for this team, or will you come and, maybe do a coaching session for different teams or whatever. And at start, I was kind of slow on doing it, not because I didn't want to, but I was thinking, maybe I won't be any good at it, and I might know, what kind of way to handle things. But then I kind of started making notes myself, and I started writing out little plans that I'd done for years, different coaches I'd worked under and different managers I've had. I just started writing out, and I had books of stuff, of different things. And I was like, well, all I have to do is kind of turn up and do things, what I've kind of been going through, and see what works. So I went along to Ballyhigh, and I did a few sessions at the park and a few different local teams. And then I kind of got the bug for it. I was like, I enjoy this. I really enjoy this. So I started doing my coaching badges, my UEFA coaching badges. So I started doing them while I was playing as well. So I completed the B license. I'm nearly finished the A license now. And then with the whole Kerry thing, I was at Limerick at the time, and I had to do so many hours on my UEFA license. So I had to kind of get involved with a team. So I got involved with the Kerry under-17s and was kind of giving them a hand. And it kind of grew from there. And in the following year, obviously, I stopped playing, and they asked me would I get involved in the Kerry Schoolboys League as well, with all the underage side of things, so from under 10 to under 16s. I was overseeing them and helping out with the structures that they're looking to improve on. And then obviously I started managing the 17s, so I was full on with all the coaching, and it's taken over now. And to be honest, I enjoy it every much as bit as playing.
You'll go up to senior level, as in Airtricity League down the line, or anywhere like that, do you reckon, as the years progress, we'll say?
Yeah, I mean, if you look around the League of Ireland now at the minute, even this year alone, I was only seeing it there, going back maybe a couple of months ago. It made me realise that Stephen Bradley, who's the Shamrock Rovers manager now at the minute, he's an ex-teammate of mine at Rovers. Stephen O'Donnell, who's the manager of St. Pat's, an ex-teammate of mine. And Neil Fenn, Cork City, next teammate of mine as well, and all young men, young men. So, obviously, and Shelburne as well have E. Morris, young manager. So the clubs seem to be looking at managers like players now, in terms of that maybe they'd be a bit of an asset as a young manager if you come in and do well. You're more attractable maybe to other teams. And you know, they might be able to kind of get competition down the road. So it's great to see young managers getting a chance in the league. And, you know, to me, definitely, yeah, it's fantastic to see it. And, you know, definitely, you know, it's something that I have my eye on for the future. But for now, I'm very, very much so happy in what I'm doing, because, you know, I kind of want to learn from every age group all the way up and be able to kind of build a club environment. And that's what I'm trying to do here at Kerry at the minute, is, you know, try and help every age group as much as I can. And, you know, hopefully that will keep progressing the way it has been over the last year or two. And we can get into a senior team at some stage. And you know, hopefully my coaching career and you know, Kerry, hopefully we can grow together into senior setup. And that would be the ultimate dream, really.
Yeah. And you were with the 17s last year. Are you with them again this year, or are you gone up to 19s now?
I went up to 19s this year. So I was with the 17s last year, and Kerry entered in on the 19 team last season. So, you know, I was moving up to them this year. And, you know, it's a shame really, because the players, they train so hard. You know, we were back in December really training for a season that wasn't starting until March. You know, so we had the trials, and we had a big trial process, and all the players, you know, gave it everything in the trials. And then we picked the squad, and we'd done good 6 to 8 weeks pre-season, hard training. So the players were ready, you know, they were ready, and I was looking forward to seeing them compete, because I felt like that they could compete at that level, definitely. So it's a shame, you know, that they've missed out on all that for the players, because, you know, they deserve to go out and kind of show all the hard work they'd put in.
And do you think there's a big difference in quality of, it's a big question now for your peers as well if they're watching, do you think there's a big difference in quality of the under 17s or 19s now in Kerry than there was when you were playing around that age group in Kerry?
I think nowadays the players have more in terms of facilities, number one. I mean, you go back to the KDL there's not many places like it in Ireland. No. You know, the facilities that they have, and, you know, that ultimately helps the players because they can train more often. There's no games called off, there's no training called off. You know, the quality of the surface is better to work on any technical stuff. So, like, the nutrition information is better. You know, the strength conditioning information is better. So there's so much more information now available to young players that I never had when I was their age. You know, I mean, nowadays, I keep saying to the players all the time, young lads, you know, you shouldn't be wasting your time on social media and all these things, reading through it. You should be Googling what do I need to do to improve, because everything can nearly be there for you now. You can sit at night and you can read 100 different things on what way to improve as a player, and you can pick the bits you want for your position. So you have a lot more resources now than you did years ago, and I don't think the players are probably utilising that as much as they could be. And I think that will be key to young players progressing and the ones who don't.
And I suppose I will ask you one last question. Or actually, no, I have two. So one of them is, if you were to give somebody advice, when you were, what age were you when you first went to your first professional team?
I was probably 16. I went on trial to Nottingham Forest, I think it was. I think it was Forest or Villa. And, you know, I was obviously just a young lad coming from Kerry, playing in the local Kerry leagues. I went with Ireland a couple of times, and the trials kind of came from there. But, you know, when you went over to England in that environment, it's totally different. You know, I think the biggest change is that you go from playing with your friends and you know, going out training with your friends, and these lads aren't your friends. You know, this is work, and this is, you know, it's a ruthless environment that you're in then, you know. So the enjoyment element of it probably is a bit different to when you're playing, you know, with your buddies back home, and you're on the pitch and you're training, you're playing matches, and, you know, the environments are completely different. So that's the biggest change, I think, from playing locally and then playing in a professional setup. Yeah.
And do you have, if you were to go back to yourself now, going from not even say this 16-year-old you, but even somebody that wants to make that jump from playing under 17 or under 19 and they're jumping straight to a team like Sheffield United. So is it Leo Gashka that went straight from Kerry to Sheffield United?
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for someone like himself who'd be jumping straight from one standard to a completely different standard almost at that age?
Yeah, I'd say probably just believe in yourself. You know, believe in yourself more. You know, it's probably something that I didn't do enough of when I went over. You know, I was probably very harsh on myself. You know, even with my performances and the way I used to play. You know, even when, you know, my girlfriend moved up to Dublin when I was at Shamrock Rovers, and after the game I could be up until 4 or 5 in the morning, analysing the game in my head, or if it was on the TV, I'd watch it back a couple of times, and I'd be nitpicking at things, and crucifying myself, and that could go on for a couple of days after a game, So what I would say is for our young lads to, go out and enjoy it. Obviously have standards in terms of your performance, in terms of how you train and how you prepare for training. Have standards that you don't let slip. So you work to those standards every day. But ultimately, is not to be too harsh on yourself and believe in yourself, because no matter what, in this game you'll have ups and downs. It's inevitable. Everybody will have them in this game, and it's just to stay even. Don't get too high when things are going good, and don't get too low when things are going bad. It's just, try and find that common ground and try and stay even throughout it all. And I think that will kind of help you with peace of mind, and it'll definitely help you get a lot more sleep as well. That's for sure.
Yeah. So last question. Go on, Chris. Yeah, do you want?
So my one question to kind of finish it off, being a coach now, or being when you were playing. So what would have been your most stick out moments, like the most surreal? Because you won two Airtricity Leagues. Am I right in saying that too?
Yeah, that's right.
Cup, yeah. So what would be your best, like, geez, looking back on that was the best day of my life as a professional, like,
Yeah. Again, there's a few that just spring into my head from the questions you asked. Obviously, once you sign a contract, a first professional contract, as a young lad, that's a drink went through straight away. All of a sudden you're getting paid a few quid to go and wake up and train in the morning and go and play games. That's very surreal, and that's definitely a moment that you kind of, don't probably think will happen, and then when it does, you're delighted, obviously. Obviously the leagues, but I think the most enjoyment that I've ever got out of a game or out of a situation in through the game is that when my family were there as well. My mother and father were very, very good, as in they went to every game nearly, no matter where I was playing. Me and my brother, and they always supported every game we went to. And I think the FAI Cup final in 2000, Jesus, I can't remember the years now, they're all kind of mixed together, but it was 2015 maybe. We were playing Dundalk in the Aviva, and I've said this before, I was in the tunnel in the Aviva, and I was at the back, and I was looking ahead of me out into the stadium, and there was a good crowd, and Dundalk were beside us, and then I could just see my brother was in front of me there, just a little bit ahead, and I kind of just had a moment to myself where I was like, we're just two lads from Kerry here walking out into Lansdowne Road, and we're just come from this small area down in Kerry, and here we are up with all of them, up with the big boys of the League of Ireland, so to speak, and that was a bit of a surreal moment for me, and I really kind of took that moment in a lot more than I have of others. I just had a minute to myself in the tunnel, and that was nice. I enjoyed it, and obviously my family were at the game and all that. The result didn't go our way. We lost the game in injury time at the end. We lost the game in injury time, I think it was, in the end. But that those kind of things probably stick with me a lot more than winning trophies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, just to wrap it up, quick question: best goal you've seen as a player? I only expect one answer, because I've only ever been to one Airtricity League game, and it was when you gave us tickets.
Did I? Yeah. Jeez,
yeah.
You have some memory, Pat. I can't remember this.
Shed End against Pats. It was like the third last game of the season.
Ah, no way. How many did I get you?
6, 7.
Did I? Yeah.
Oh, I was mental, man. We were rotten.
I'm still waiting for a few quid for them. So.
I'm only messing.
The bicycle kick. Were you at that one?
Bicycle kick. Yeah, we were right. I'd say it was the 86th or 7th minute. I'm not gonna lie, it was a shite game for 86 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just possession game nearly, and then all of a sudden Colin Healy just decides to fucking score a bicycle kick top corner.
Oh, the nowhere, yeah, because we were up there at the league at the time. We were kind of, at the top going for league at Dundalk, and when you're at that stage of the season, every game is so cagey because you don't want to go all out attacking and leave yourself vulnerable to counter attacks. So the games are cagey. So a lot of those matches are kind of decided on something spectacular, and by God, was that a spectacular one. I think it was the only goal I've seen him ever score, to be honest. I said to him afterwards, he nearly broke his shoulder doing it.
That's the only Airtricity League game I was ever at, and it was probably the best goal I'm ever going to see live, I'd say. It was just because, you see, that's what I noticed as well about the atmosphere in Airtricity League games. Like, I was at Old Trafford, and obviously that's 80,000 people or whatever. but that's when I was young and we seen Charlton play, and well, they played against Charlton Athletic. We didn't see the Charltons play, but they played at Charlton Athletic, and you know, it was a great game. Whatever, like the atmosphere was kind of only. It was back and forth, kind of, because it was a game they were walking away, but it wasn't. There was nothing spectacular.
Yeah.
I can remember being up in Turner's Cross and just the atmosphere for the whole 90 minutes. It was because it was so close. Because I can remember, I think he went to the last day of the season with Dundalk that year.
That's right. Yeah.
He actually ended up playing Dundalk in the last game or something. I can
Mm.
remember, and you could just feel like
we only needed to draw.
Yeah, like we were just boys from Kerry that came all the way up to Cork to watch a Cork City game, and the lads, all Cork fellas next to us going, "What are you doing up here?" We were like, well, Billy got us tickets, and you know, and whatever. But you could just see for 90 minutes, no matter how bad the game was, they kept going, and it was great crack, like, you know. So that was one thing I learned straight away from the Airtricity League.
And again, to go back to your point, Pat, like that's what can be created in the Airtricity League. You know, there's probably maybe 7,000-8,000, probably if not more, there that night. You know, and you have an atmosphere and you have a crowd, and that's what I'm saying about like the marketing and the branding of the game. You know, obviously for any team to be supported, nobody wants to support a losing team. You know, everyone wants to support the team that's winning and doing well. And I think that Cork for those couple of years, that was the big difference. You know, they went from crowds of maybe 1,500 up to 2,000 up to maybe 7,000 or 8,000. You know, because people were kind of on the bandwagon of a team doing well. And I think that's a big element to creating a sustainable League of Ireland club as well. You know, you have to be looking to be successful, and, you know, you have to create that atmosphere within the ground. But when you do, like yourself now, you know, you had a great experience of it. And I think that can be achieved definitely around the country. And it'd be nice to have a few of those nights down in Kerry in a few years' time.
Yeah, hopefully. They have a big stadium, but size of New Camp now, hopefully, out the back of Dunn's car park or something.
Oh, yeah, above the KDL, you can call it the Bernabeu.
The Bernabeu.
Yeah.
Listen, Billy, thanks very much for everything. It was a pleasure having you on.
Boys.
And Chris, have you anything to say there before we go?
Great, no, thank you. You've answered all my questions anyway today. You answered what I wanted anyway. That's the main thing.
No problem, Chris. You're probably looking for a few more interesting answers, but that's as good as I can give you.
Oh, that's fun.
So, for myself, Chris, and Billy, thanks for listening, lads.